When I pulled up the dirt road leading to my old family cabin after years away, I could already feel something was off. The air was still crisp, the pine trees still swayed the same way they did when I was a kid, and the faint smell of cedar smoke still lingered in the valley. But something didn't feel right. There were signs everywhere that hadn't been there before, big metal ones bolted into the ground, private property, HOA members only, no trespassing. Unauthorized vehicles will be towed. I frowned, gripping the steering wheel. My family had owned this entire valley for over 80 years, long before any homeowners association ever existed. The land had been passed down from my grandfather, who built the very first cabin here with his bare hands. He used to tell me, asterisk, this valley will always be ours, son. No one can take it away. Asterisk, apparently, someone had decided to test that theory. I parked my old Ford near the cabin gate. I noticed new pavement marks, fancy landscaping, even a security post made of brick. That's when I heard the hum of an electric golf cart coming down the hill that a woman, probably in her late 40s, wearing an oversized visor, huge sunglasses, and a shiny badge that read Community Enforcement, Pine Ridge HOA, stopped right in front of my truck. She had that "I run this place" expression on her face, chin raised, arms folded, and tone already sharp before she even opened her mouth. "You can't be here," she snapped. "This road and property belong to Pine Ridge HOA. Leave before I call the cops." I blinked, half in disbelief, half in amusement. "Excuse me? Ma'am, this is my family's land. My grandfather built that cabin right there." I pointed toward the old wooden cabin barely visible through the trees. She interrupted me with a mocking laugh. "Sure he did. We've had family stories like that before. Listen, buddy, I don't know who you think you are, but this is private HOA property now. You're trespassing." I tried to stay calm. "Look, maybe there's some confusion. My name's Jack Harrison. My family's owned this valley since 1942. I still have the deed and tax records. Save your lies." She snapped again, waving her phone. "We've had squatters before. I'm calling the sheriff." And then she actually did it. I just stood there, watching her chatter into the phone, describing me like I was some criminal trying to break into someone's vacation home. A few minutes later, two sheriff's deputies pulled up in their patrol SUV, tires crunching on the gravel. The same woman, I'll call her Karen because honestly, she was the walking definition of one, pointed straight at me. "That's him. Said he owns this land. He's been snooping around and refuses to leave." The deputies approached me carefully, one hand resting near his belt. "Sir, can we see some ID?" "Of course," I said, handing them my license. "But you might want to hear the whole story first." I explained everything. How my grandfather bought all 320 acres of this valley after World War II, how my family kept paying the taxes even after the cabin fell into disuse, and how I came back after years away to restore it. The younger deputy seemed unsure, but the older one frowned, glancing toward Karen. "Ma'am, do you have proof this land belongs to the HOA?" Karen crossed her arms. "Of course. The HOA maintains the road, the lake access, everything. We built this community years ago." I couldn't help but smirk. Built on my land, apparently. That didn't go over well. She started shouting about property rights and community authority until the sheriff finally told her to calm down. They ran my name, checked my ID, and that's when things got interesting. The older deputy came back after a quick radio call. "Mr. Harrison, you're right. According to county records, this parcel, including the road and the lower lake, is still under your family's ownership." Karen's face went pale. "That's not possible," our HOA president said. "Ma'am," the deputy cut in, "looks like your development might be sitting on some private property. You'll need to resolve that through the county office." I could see her jaw tightening, her hands trembling as the reality started to hit. She wasn't just bossing around some random trespasser. She had just called the cops on a man who owned the land under her community, but I decided to stay calm and not rub it in. Yet, "It's okay, officers. I'll head to the county office tomorrow to clear this up officially. I just wanted to visit my cabin and check on the property." The deputies nodded and warned Karen to avoid further confrontation. But she wasn't done. As I walked toward the cabin, I could feel her glare burning through me. She pulled out her phone again, probably calling the HOA board to report what just happened. Inside the cabin, dust covered everything, but the smell of pine and old wood felt like home. I lit a lantern, sat by the cracked window, and looked out over the valley that once belonged fully to my family. Now there were rooftops, paved driveways, fences, all built without my permission. And I realized something big. If the county records still showed I owned this land, then every single one of those fancy homes, roads, and lake docks was sitting right on my property. As the wind howled outside and Karen's golf cart disappeared down the hill, I smiled to myself for the first time that day. This wasn't over. The silence that followed was almost cinematic, the kind of quiet where you could hear every pine needle hit the ground. Karen's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her golf cart idled beside her, buzzing faintly, like even the machine was embarrassed for her. The sheriff adjusted his hat and looked between the two of us. "Mr. Harrison," he said, "I think you and the county are going to have a lot to talk about. This looks like a serious oversight." I nodded calmly. "Oh, I'll be talking to the county and to my lawyer." Karen finally found her voice. "This has to be some mistake," she stammered. "The HOA's had control over this area for decades. We pay dues, maintain the roads, handle security." The sheriff interrupted. "Ma'am, I just ran the parcel numbers. He owns every acre from the ridge to the lake. Your HOA's been sitting on private property. That's not a mistake. That's a legal disaster." You could almost see the gears turning in her head, the realization sinking in that every email she'd sent, every fine she'd issued, every violation, notice slapped on someone's door, all of it was built on nothing. No ownership, no authority. That I leaned against my truck, arms folded, watching her crumble under the truth. "Funny thing," I said softly, "I used to come here every summer. I'd fish at that lake before you folks put up your members-only signs. You ever think to check whose lake that was?" Her sunglasses couldn't hide the panic in her eyes. We maintain that lake. It's part of community property." I smiled. "It's part of my property." The sheriff cleared his throat, clearly trying not to grin. "Well, sounds like the community's got some explaining to do." He handed me back my papers, neat and careful. "Mr. Harrison, you're within your rights to be here. If they give you any more trouble, call us directly." Karen turned to him in disbelief. "You can't just let him, ma'am," he said firmly. "Technically, you're trespassing. Every house in this subdivision is. Until this is sorted in court, I'd suggest you and your board cooperate with him." That word, trespassing, hit her like a brick. She froze, jaw trembling, as if the entire HOA empire she'd been ruling over just evaporated in front of her eyes. I thanked the sheriff and watched as the patrol car rolled back down the dirt road, leaving Karen standing there in silence. She looked lost, like someone had yanked the rug out from under her world. That I walked toward my old cabin, brushing a layer of dust off the porch railing. The wood creaked beneath my boots, the same boards my grandfather had nailed into place almost a century ago. The view stretched for miles, pine ridges, the shimmering blue lake, and beyond it, the tidy rows of houses that now sat squarely on land I legally owned. For a while, I just stood there, thinking. All those years, this valley had been quiet, forgotten. After my father passed, I moved to the city, stopped visiting, stopped paying attention. And while I was gone, someone decided my family's legacy was free real estate. But now that I was back, things were about to change. Over the next few days, I went to the county records office. The clerks looked shocked as they pulled up the old files. Sure enough, the original developer of Pine Ridge had signed a 99-year lease-to-own agreement with my father, but the company went bankrupt less than 15 years in. No transfer deed had ever been filed. The HOA, thinking they'd inherited ownership, just kept maintaining and building without realizing they were doing it all on my family's land. By law, the land still belonged entirely to me. Every home, every fence, every HOA sign, all sitting on property I could legally reclaim. When the news hit the HOA board, panic spread like wildfire. Karen and her team called an emergency meeting in their community hall, a building also sitting neatly inside my property line. I didn't even have to ask for an invitation. They sent a request for discussion. Funny how fast their tone changed once they realized who actually owned the valley. When I arrived that evening, the hall was packed. Neighbors whispering, board members sweating, Karen trying to maintain her fake calm. There were files scattered on the table, maps, legal documents, HOA policies, all meaningless now. Karen tried to start strong. "Mr. Harrison," she said, forcing a smile, "we'd like to clear up this misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" I asked. "You called the cops on me for visiting my own land." Her smile wavered. "That was a mistake. But surely we can come to some agreement? The HOA has invested in maintaining the community. Roads, utilities, landscaping." I raise an eyebrow. "All done on my property, without permission." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A man in the back, probably one of the homeowners, spoke up. "Wait, are you saying our houses aren't even on legally owned land?" I nodded slowly. "That's exactly what I'm saying." A hush fell over the room. People began whispering, some glancing angrily at the board. Karen tried to regain control. "We can work this out. We're prepared to offer." "Karen," I interrupted, "let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we talk about offers, I'm having a surveyor mark the original property boundaries. Once that's done, I'll decide what to do about the encroachments." The color drained from her face again, because she knew exactly what that meant. Some of those multi-million-dollar houses, hers included, might end up on land they had no right to occupy. I left the hall that night to the sound of chaos. Board members arguing, homeowners demanding answers, and Karen shouting over everyone to stay calm. But I was calm, because for the first time in decades, the valley was mine again, and I hadn't even started with them yet. The next few weeks were pure chaos, at least for them. For me, it was poetic justice finally catching up after years of silence. Within days of the county confirming my ownership, the HOA board was in full panic mode. Their lawyer, a slick man in a gray suit who looked like he hadn't slept in days, showed up at my cabin one morning with a folder full of proposals. He spoke in a tone that was supposed to sound confident, but I could hear the tremor under it. "Mr. Harrison," he said carefully, "the Pine Ridge community would like to resolve this matter amicably. We realized there was a misunderstanding regarding land ownership." I smiled and poured myself a cup of coffee. "A misunderstanding? Your client built an entire neighborhood on my family's land, sent me trespassing notices, and called the cops. I'd say that's a bit more than a misunderstanding." He swallowed hard. "Be that as it may, our homeowners are willing to negotiate fair compensation. We just hope you'll allow them to remain." I leaned back in my chair. "Oh, they can stay. But things are going to change." And that's when I laid out my terms, my new rules. Every single homeowner would now pay a yearly land lease fee directly to me. No exceptions, no negotiations. The HOA, if it wanted to continue existing, would operate under my oversight. Any fines, fees, or community rules would now require my written approval. In short, I was now the one in charge, the landlord of their entire world. You should have seen their faces when the official notice went out. Some homeowners were furious, some devastated, others simply resigned. But legally, they had no ground to stand on. Their houses might have been built by the HOA, but the earth beneath them, the foundation, was mine. Karen, of course, was the loudest protester. She tried to rally the residents, claiming I was extorting them. That didn't last long. Her own lawyer reminded her that she had no claim to the land, no title, and no legal authority to fight me. The very next week, she was the first to sign the lease agreement. Her signature shaky, her pride shattered. Meanwhile, I focused on restoring what mattered most to me, my grandfather's cabin. I rebuilt the porch, replaced the cracked windows, sanded down the old pine floors, and even restored the stone fireplace my father used to sit beside on winter nights. I turned it from a forgotten shack into a symbol, a reminder of who this valley truly belonged to. When the renovations were done, I installed a large wooden sign at the entrance, carved by hand, polished, and set into solid oak posts. It read asterisk asterisk, "Welcome to Mason Valley, private land, family owned since 1943. The first day I unveiled it, I could see Karen drive by in her golf cart. She slowed down, sunglasses hiding her eyes, lips tight. For a second, I thought she might stop and say something, maybe an apology, maybe just a hello. But she didn't. She just gave a quick, awkward wave, and kept going. Now, every time I see her doing her little patrol rounds, clipboard in hand, I can't help but smirk. She doesn't bark orders anymore. She doesn't call the cops or hand out citations. Because now every check her HOA cuts, every fine, every lease fee, every penny that leaves their accounts goes through me. And every time Karen signs one of those checks, I know she remembers that day. The day she tried to throw me off her property. The day she called the cops on the man who owns the entire valley she lives in. Sometimes I sit on the porch at sunset, coffee in hand, watching the light fade over the ridges. The air is still crisp. The pines still whisper the same way they did when I was a kid. Only now, the peace feels different because justice, real, quiet, steady justice, finally came home at the end.